Hello and welcome to the Gersnet Podcast, the independent Rangers podcast made for fans, by fans, and where the content is absolutely free. It's a Valentine's Day special tonight, and to mark the occasion we're going to treat you to a Rangers love-in following yet another victory in the league. It was Kilmarnock who were beaten at Ibrox yesterday. Ryan Jack's stunning first half goal, enough for the win, leaves us 4 games away from the finishing line in the league. We're going to take a look at that and all the big moments in the game, as well as all talking points on and off the pitch, and what has proved to be another busy week for the club. I'm your host, David Wren. Joining me tonight is my fellow Gersnet host, Ross Bennett, and one of our resident Rangers dads, John McCallum. Ross, how's it going? I'm loving that headset.
Thank you very much. I had it on a couple of weeks ago and couldn't get it to work. Had to bin it. I've tinkered about a wee bit, which means making sure it's plugged in. And I know it's good. I feel very professional now.
Yeah, I remember the debut. I was there, man.
Not good.
Yeah,
not good.
But no, it's good. It's good. John, pleasure.
I don't feel professional. Don't worry.
Yeah, it's a
either look
pleasure
it or feel it. I've still got these things that I got free with a phone in 2004.
Yeah, I mean, they look. I've got the same thing as you, and they look far better than Ross's thing. So,
yeah, absolutely.
By Rossi's thing, I mean his headset. I just don't want that to.
Aye, the cameras are on, but it's not that kind of show.
John, it's good to have you back. One of my favourite guests.
That's very kind of you. There is only 3 of us, to be fair.
Yeah, there is only a few, but no, I'm sure it'll be an enjoyable show. Another victory at the weekend. But what we'll start off with tonight is just a bit of breaking news in the last sort of 45 minutes. Rangers releasing a short statement on social media to say that there was an internal investigation into supposed what we believe to be a COVID breach among the squad. It's understood potentially up to 4 players were involved in this, a party of some sort on Saturday night after the victory over Kilmarnock. At the moment it's an alleged breach. I'm sure the club will release further statements in the coming days. But John, we'll start with you. It's a difficult one because we don't know the facts, and as you were saying when we came on, we only really heard about this in the past half an hour, 45 minutes. It doesn't look good at the moment, but the full facts have still to come out. But it's concerning that potentially, and again we're talking about these things as just hearsay and things like that, but it would be really disappointing if there'd been a further breach of some sort.
It would be hugely disappointing. It would be very concerning. Like you say, it's difficult to put too much meat in the bones just now because we don't know a great deal about it. We've seen the club statement. I think there had been rumours through the day, and then we saw the club statement tonight. So there's clearly something to this. I think, as we spoke about this off air, I'm of the opinion, I personally am surprised there has been as few of these types of incidents as there has. And I think actually the club should be commended and the majority of the players should be commended because, I'm not a young man. My life is living, I'm living a very different life from a 19, 20, 21-year-old athlete. And it can't be easy to live that type of life. I can imagine the temptations. I can imagine the desire to just live a fairly normal life. But they have a responsibility. They are very well paid. They must know what's at stake this season. It's hugely disappointing to hear this has happened, or potentially that this has happened. And not only is it disappointing because you realise that these people have made, fairly monumental blunder, but we don't know what the repercussions could be for the club, for the players themselves.
Yeah, Ross. So in terms of this, and it's something that we've spoken about quite a lot on the podcast in recent months, is the PR at the club this season and how it has been well handled, and we've conducted ourselves, well in this throughout this season so far. But these things, I always, I don't know if it's my background in certainly my professional background, but when these things happen, often my biggest thought is how it looks for the club before you actually think of the basic facts or alleged, stories we're hearing. But often with things like this, and I think it's been prevalent over the past 5 or 6 years, you think, that could have repercussions further down the line, and I think that's the thing that concerns, it'll concern a lot of fans at the moment, that there could be something that comes of this, and certainly there'll be noise from elsewhere.
Yeah, it's difficult actually at the moment because the repercussions could be anything from a ban for the players involved. And whilst we don't know who those players are, there's rumours going around, and if the rumours are to be believed, and again at this point we don't know, but that would suggest players that probably aren't going to have too much of an impact on the starting 11 every week. It could range from that, as we saw was the case with Jones and Edmondson, through to financial penalty to the club. Could we be talking about points being docked? There will be huge calls from various parts of the media and competition within Scotland for Rangers to be made an example of, because it's the second time that we've had players running wild. So it's concerning as a fan, because there's kind of a spectrum of punishment there, and we don't know where it's going to fall, because there's not a great deal of precedent for this. You've got clubs like Kilmarnock who had games forfeited because of players sharing cars to work, allegedly, and then that was overturned. You've got Celtic going on a jolly to Dubai and admitting COVID breaches and getting positive tests after that, and no action taken there. So there's real inconsistency. There's real difficulties in knowing, at some point, are they going to try and make an example of a club? That could well be us. And that I think the lack of certainty is what's most concerning as a fan, considering what's at stake over the next possibly 4 weeks. And that's what makes it all the harder to forgive these players, the harder to believe the actions that they've taken, when it's just selfishness and stupidity, allegedly, again, if they have done it. It's really, really difficult to accept as a fan.
Yeah, I think, John, you mentioned about the fact that the players, if we're led to believe, the rumour mill saying that these are young players, and it certainly could be the case. But for the club itself, this is something that I think has been brought up, and was certainly brought up the last time with Jones and Edmondson when they were caught. How much of this can be blamed on the club when players are making their own decisions out with football? And I'm not talking about this in an isolated sense, but you saw the guy at Newcastle getting his hair cut, and there's been numerous other things that have taken place. The two boys in England duty. How much of this can be put on the clubs and the national teams and whoever else, and how much is it down to players taking responsibility?
I think it's 95% the players' responsibility. All the clubs can do is advise, remind, continue to give advice. In the end, they cannot look after players 24 hours a day. Players themselves have to take responsibility for their own actions, and I think Jones and Edmondson had to take responsibility for their own actions, and these lads have to take responsibility as well. There's a massive limit on what can be expected of the club, and what they can do. If as has been reported, they've gone to a social occasion, if the club didn't know about it, which I'm assuming they didn't, if the club didn't know about it, what can the club do about that? You can't track them 24 hours a day. So no, I don't think the club is entirely blameless in this. In the same way it was blameless in the Edmondson and Jones affair. The club did nothing wrong. The club didn't take them there. The club didn't fly them to a party in Dubai. These guys have chosen to do this themselves. And if it's true, and it comes out that it is, what's being reported is true, they will be punished, and the club will be punished either directly or indirectly, because the chances are they'll get some sort of ban from playing, you would expect. So the club will be punished, but I don't really see what more the club can do.
Yeah, I think it's interesting as well, because you look at in terms of COVID sort of protocols, the most recent one that was probably brought in was the celebrating goals, and yet every club is now celebrating goals the same way they were. So that was always a stupid one for me. I mean, but we'll not get into that tonight. But certainly that was a nonsense. But you see how little time that lasted. So yeah, it's a difficult one. I agree with both your points. I think we'll just have to wait and see what comes out of this investigation. I assume, and I would think, that there'll be more stories coming out over the next 12 or 14 hours in the papers tomorrow, and I suspect we'll hear a bit more from the club tomorrow on this, but time will tell. For now, we shall move on to the original scheduling for the night, which was going to start with some positive news on yesterday's game, which again, I had sweaty palms towards the end of that. I mean, I always have sweaty palms, but particularly sweaty palms at the end of that game yesterday, John. A good win, and the thing is, and this is something I've felt quite a lot this season. These sort of games where you feel like it was really, really nerve-wracking throughout. I watched the game back, actually, just the highlights this evening, and it was a lot more comfortable in the second half than it seemed. But there was points, and I think a lot of that was a hangover from last Sunday for the fans, where you're just waiting for something to happen. But all in all, a positive display.
Yeah, I mean, you said it yourself, a lot of it's to do with what happened the week before. At 1-0, you never are confident, and particularly as it's into injury time, you're always worried that something's going to come of that. But in reality, Kilmarnock provided very little of a threat. I don't remember a save for McGregor, and there may have been one in the first half, but I don't remember it. The few crosses that he dealt with, but I don't remember Kilmarnock really posing much of a threat, whereas we should have had a penalty in the first half, and Aribo should definitely have scored in the second half, and you could argue that Eaton should have. I was teased about my pronunciation of his name after Friday night, so I'm not too sure whether it's Eaton or Eaton. A Swiss friend told me it was Eaton, but I thought he should have scored as well. He certainly got shot away at one. He was kind of running with concrete boots on. So you're right. We were all nervous going into the last 10 minutes because of what happened the week before, but in reality, it was a very different game. Hamilton gave us a game the week before. I thought Kilmarnock were poor. They tried to stop us play. They, and they did that quite successfully. I actually thought their two centre halves played quite well. It was a more comfortable win than perhaps the scoreline suggests.
Yeah, I think certainly that Aribo will come on to the sort of the goal that we did score, but there were a couple of moments in the game that we could have put it to bed in the second half. But Ross, when you look at the way we dominated the game, and Gerald mentioned it after, but we did have control of the match, from the start, really, compared to the week before, where you never really felt like we could get a foot in the ball and properly control the tempo. So it was pleasing to see that return.
Yeah, I think control's a good word for it, and not trying to say I'm braver than everyone else, but I wasn't that nervous actually. Even as the second half went on, the Kilmarnock never really threatened anything. They never got close to equalising. And John and I were on the preview show on Friday, and we kind of spoke about their defensive struggles and a bit of a lack of creativity. And I don't think they ever really threatened much at all. I think we won the midfield battle without doubt. And when you have players like Ryan Jack and Steve Davis on form, then the game is going to be under control, whatever the opposition in Scotland. And it should have been a lot more comfortable. As you say, Aribo, Itten should have, even Ryan Kent should have found the back of the net. Okay, it wasn't the day for that, but it was, to me, it was a comfortable, dominant, assured performance against a team that over not just the last season, but the last maybe 4 years or so has given us far too many headaches. After last week, it was all about getting 3 points, ticking that counter from 15 points down to 12. That's all they needed to do, and I was pleased with how they did it.
Yeah, going on to the goal, John, I can't remember every single goal we scored this season, but certainly I was WhatsApping Ross during the game, and it did get a 2 hands in the air from me celebration, that goal, which is quite a good bar of how I celebrate. But what a piece of technique. I mean, really, if that was scored down south, you'd be seeing it for weeks on end. But certainly, got to be up there, goal of the season, especially in the league.
Definitely, that was an absolute beauty. Everything about it. The first touch, he took it. I was saying to my dad later, is that a half volley or is that a full volley? Because it didn't touch the ground. It came out to him, and this, the first touch was just fantastic. And the only thing better than the first touch was the second touch. Mm-hmm. 2 goalkeepers couldn't have stopped it. Absolute beauty. And you realise that Jack is an accomplished football player. I think when he came to us from Aberdeen, I had my doubts. I'm going to be honest with you. I wasn't over the moon. It wasn't my ideal signing. But every season he's been with us, he's improved. He's a player who has benefited from the coaching he's getting. He's a player who has fitted into the type of football we play. And that goal was, he'll never score a better goal than that. And he might score a more important one, but he'll never score a better one. Absolute beauty. And he's not a player who scores a lot of goals. He isn't a guy who's, this guy who scored maybe 4 or 5 goals a season. But what a strike. And like you say, if it had been down south, if that was a South American playing in the Spanish league, they'd be replaying that all across Europe because it was an absolute peach. It was one of these goals. Everything about it was perfect.
Yeah. Ross, in terms of Rangers as a team over the past 2 or 3 years, it's been one of those things where, especially even this season, where we do a lot of nice things in and around the box, but often just don't pull the trigger at the right time. But you see that today, and we've had a couple other goals, more set-piece-like free-kick goals that have sort of broken down stubborn teams at Ibrox this season like that. But, it just shows you, and I know it's easy to say, why do we not take more shots from the edge of the area, but, and having seen a bit of Killie this season, heard from a few boys I know down there, that the goalkeeper has struggled, and I just don't understand why we don't take more shots from the edge of the area, considering, especially when you take in the goalkeeper situation for the opposition team and how difficult it is to break teams down. So it's good to see us get a goal in that way.
Mm-hmm. No, I think you're right. I mean, Ryan Jack probably wouldn't be the first choice I'd have to take a goal from 20 yards out, but it has been frustrating. I think we've probably all spoken on this show before about players like Glenn Kamara who will be 18 yards from goal, and you think just hit it, just have a go, and he'll sort of wait for Barisic to run past him and then he'll square it. So yeah, I mean, we've all said it. Gerrard said it after the game as well. We know we don't shoot enough from outside the box. I actually think Yanis Hadji does this, and it's one thing that he's brought that we lacked was someone who will actually have a go. And I think as well, since Ryan Jack came back from injury, sort of 3 weeks ago, something like that, he's had a little bit more of a positive drive about him. A criticism of Ryan Jack maybe last season was that he was always very tidy, always been a very, very tidy footballer, but never really dared to go and be creative. I think there's something in the second half of this season, he's kind of changed that about himself, and he's got a couple of goals in the last few weeks, and that was I don't know, it's as if Yanis Hadji's kind of rubbed off on him, because I would never have expected him to take that on. The goal itself, it reminded me of, do you remember Tav against Peterhead in the Petrofac final a few years ago? Lovely first touch, sets himself, takes it on the volley. Tav's was maybe arguably slightly better, but we don't shoot enough from outside the box. Like I say, Yanis Hadji, is the one player that I think does. And I think Gerrard likes that. I think he's given him that free rein to have a go. And it's worked. Hadji's scored a few times from outside the box. And when he's not, there's been at least once where another player's followed it up. I can think of Kamar Roof about a month ago. Keeper spills it and Roof has a tap in. So it's worth doing, as you say. I think there have been so many games since we returned to the top flight, so many games where Scottish teams just park 10 men behind the ball and say, come and have a go. And, Livingston this season is an example of where we couldn't do anything with that. And last season there were plenty. So yeah, it's something different and we might as well try it. And it is working.
Yeah. After the goal, it was, it looked like we might have got another one, but I'm going to come on to a couple of contentious decisions, and I'll go to John on this. I'm just going to throw both of them at you, but definitely a shout for a penalty on both sides, probably. But the Tav one, shortly after the goal, when he was coming in at the back post, it looked, to me, I think if you're a referee and you see that, and you see the players involved, I was amazed they didn't give a penalty.
Yeah, so was I. I thought it was an absolute stonewall penalty. I thought, like you say, from the way Tav himself reacted to when the ball come across, because he's got an absolute perfect chance of scoring, certainly of making the keeper work. You don't fluff your lines from there. He doesn't anyway this season. I have no doubt there was contact. I have no doubt he was forced. Whether it was a nudge in the back or whether it was just a full barge. I was amazed a penalty wasn't given. It looked an absolute stonewall one to me. Only the ref can tell why he decided against it. But thankfully it didn't make a difference to the game, but it could have done.
Yeah,
it would have been annoying because it should have been a penalty.
It could have done in the second half, because I must admit I thought the Balogun on Pinnock, I think it was a foul. I think the only contentious aspect of it would be whether it was in the box or not. But I always fear when defenders give it the old, it's that they're struggling.
I like you. I thought it was a penalty at the time. First glance at it, I thought, "Oh, what's he done?" And I can understand why Kilmarnock were incensed by it. On replay, it was outside the box.
Yeah,
the ref doesn't get a replay. Had the ref given it, I don't know. We would maybe be incensed today, saying, "Well, it was outside the box. The ref should see that. The linesman should see it." On first viewing, I didn't realise. I didn't know it was outside the box. On second viewing, definitely outside the box. Wasn't a penalty. Ref got that right, but I was surprised he didn't give the foul, because it did look like a foul.
Yeah, it's quite strange, because I thought both of them. I don't think there was much. There was no.
The ref was surprisingly lenient yesterday. I mean, I thought they could have had a couple of bookings in the first half before one of the players got booked for kind of knocking the ball out of the hands of, was it Barisic or somebody, I can't remember, from a throw-in. But I thought before that they could have had a couple of bookings just for consistent professional fouls or persistent professional fouls. I thought they could have had a couple of bookings. I thought the ref, I don't know, I think he just didn't fancy. Maybe it was cold. He didn't fancy getting his hands out his pockets or something, because he was surprisingly lenient on a number of things. And I thought, had he awarded 2 penalties, I don't think you could have criticised him too much for that.
Yeah, I must admit, I thought Kilmarnock, we kind of spoke about it off air, but I thought Kilmarnock struggled yesterday, and I don't think they look in a good place at the moment. I think even Tommy Wright coming in, they just didn't lay a glove on us, really.
Poorest side I've seen at Ibrox this season, I think.
Yeah, to me,
I know we hammered, I think we put 7 or something past Hamilton, but oddly enough, I still think Hamilton have got more fight about them. And as they showed last Sunday, they'll have a goal, but I just thought Kilmarnock looked beaten before they came on. Yeah, they just looked a bit soulless, didn't they? But nevertheless, Ross, another clean sheet at Ibrox. But Balogun this time instead of Hollander. Actually, I thought that would happen. I didn't think Hollander did a particularly bad game last week, but I just felt that Gerrard would look to shake it up, and that's probably the most obvious place to do it. But again, Balogun and Goldson for me, and I'm a big fan of Hollander, but I just feel more secure when both of those guys are playing. I think Goldson and Balogun have a bit of an understanding, probably a better understanding than Hollander and Goldson do.
But nevertheless, another clean sheet and another solid defensive performance.
Yeah, absolutely, it was. I don't think I could split Balogun or Hollander. I think they're slightly different. Balogun is obviously a much faster player. And I think that Hollander, therefore, has to be a slightly smarter player with his positioning, and I think he is. I think both of them have a mistake in them, and we've actually seen that more from Hollander. Whether it be in Europe, a couple of bad mistakes in Europe that we've seen from him. He's probably shown a few more mistakes, but I think Balogun has maybe got away with a couple of things once or twice. And yesterday, as we say, that should have been a foul probably. And had it been another half yard up the pitch, it would have been a penalty, and that would have been a real error from Balogun. So I actually, they're slightly different players, but I think I couldn't split them. So I don't really mind actually which one we have in. Goldson has been spectacular all season. I think, this is a player who 2 years ago was kind of consistently making mistakes. And I remember maybe even last year, there was a lot of criticism of Gerrard because he would never be brave enough to drop Goldson. And Goldson was undroppable. Goldson was a guaranteed pick every week. But this year, he's been one of the players of the season, absolutely. And then you look behind the back four, and you've got McGregor, who I know we'll probably come on to talk about him a little bit later on in his own right. But the confidence that man must give you as a defender is actually, it's probably not confidence, it's probably fear, because if you make a mistake, it's not worth living anymore. I mean, we saw that after Hamilton last week. So it's a very, very solid back line. I mean, Goldson is just one of the best centre halves in this league, probably the best centre half in the league by far. Balogun and Hollander, you have two good international standard centre halves. The fullbacks, we know about their limited capacity in terms of defending. Barisic is Croatia's number one left back, so that says something about him. We know that they're more attacking than they are defensive in the modern style of fullbacks. But the way that Ryan Jack, Steve Davis, Glenn Kamara, Bongani Zungu, Scott Arfield, whoever it is, whichever two are playing that day, the way that they protect and screen the back four, it just works. And yeah, I mean, there was a funny comment on Sports Scene last night that it seems that teams have figured out how to play against Rangers, and that's this team that's unbeaten and has conceded 8 goals all season, and that's because of the solid back line, undoubtedly.
Yeah, I'm going to rewind a bit. I meant to mention something that really shocked me when I saw it again tonight. That miss by Aribo yesterday was. And he was magnificent in the second half. From half time, just controlled the game. And I've watched it so many times, John, and I cannot get my head around what he was trying to do. Because even when Ryan Kent runs down, does fantastically well, plays the ball back. Even when he messed up the first touch, all he had to do was turn on his right foot, put it in.
Yeah,
I've genuinely, and for someone who is probably the most composed player I've seen at Ibrox in a long, long time. It was just, I don't know what happened.
It's a weakness in his game. It's probably his biggest weakness is that he isn't clinical enough in front of goal, in my opinion. I mean, he does chip in with goals, but considering the amount of game time he's had this season, and considering he's mainly being played as a forward now, or certainly in an attacking position, he should score more goals than he does. He's very creative. He's got a wonderful first touch. He's able to dribble. He can take the ball tight. He's got a whole host of skills, but he is not Gerd Muller. There's one for you. Go and ask your dad. He's not clinical in front of goal. I agree with you. I mean, I think we got a corner. So initially I thought, oh, right, okay. But then you saw it again. That was a terrible miss. Yeah,
it was like something you'd expect in one of those like soccer aid matches. When like some guy from a boy band, he gets the ball and it's like, and everyone's like, oh, he's going to score, and then he just falls. Yeah. But no, I honestly, it was incredible. And you know what? I thought it was, and I don't want to sound like I'm having a go because I genuinely thought it was fantastic in the second half. But I had to come back to that because I was in such shock earlier when I saw it again, because I didn't actually realise yesterday that how easy it would have been for him just to stick it back in his right foot, and put it in. But listen, it didn't have a massive impact on the game as a whole. But Ross, that's 14 wins out of 14 at Ibrox, and really the only game I can think, or two games I can think where we were really, under pressure would have been the Hibs game Boxing Day and the Celtic game thereafter in the second. So it's been pretty good this season. It's been consistent at home, and it's been good to watch.
Yeah. I think earlier on in the season there was a lot of talk about how the lack of fans have had an impact, and it makes Ibrox easier for our players to play in. And I'm actually guilty of saying that myself on this show. I now think that that's complete nonsense, because I don't think that would have an effect this long into the season. You could talk about Ibrox being an intimidating place to go. Does that ring true when there's no fans there? I don't know, but it's so important to, a successful kind of home campaign is the foundation for a successful campaign overall. Teams obviously hate coming and playing at Ibrox. Pitch isn't great, by the way. I don't know if that plays into it at all, but it's really, really pleasing. It's a shame, obviously, that there's been no fans there to see it, because it has been so dominant. And you're right, there have been a couple of pressured performances. The Old Firm on the second, of course, we know that was a very difficult game. Hibs, a couple of weeks before, or a couple of days before, we knew that we were in a game that day as well. There have been some uninspiring performances, and I'd probably put yesterday's into that category. The one that sticks out for me as well was when we beat Ross County, I think 2-0 earlier on in the season. Brandon Barker scored. Certainly an uninspiring performance, but I think overall this is a miraculous season. I mean, I think I'm right in saying already that Alan McGregor has broken the clean sheets record, for example. I think that there's going to be a number of records broken this season. I don't know if we're still on track for like the earliest win of the league. I don't know if we're on track for the biggest points gap between first and second, for example. But I suspect there's a good chance that we'll go through this season with a 100% home record. And that may well be another sort of first in Scottish football. And it might get lost amongst all the other accolades that we win this year. But it's been very, very impressive to watch, albeit through my virtual season ticket.
That's seamless, Ross. On to my
it's
next
almost like
topic.
This is planned, isn't
it? I know, as if I've got the agenda right there.
Incredible. Now, I'm going to preface this comment. If Colin Armstrong, if you're listening, this isn't just maybe you want to mute for now and go and get a cup of tea or something, because I know this will rile you. But John, I just kind of wanted to touch on this because it was something that I'd thought about a bit yesterday during the game and actually throughout the season. And I don't have a season ticket, so I've been buying games on Rangers TV game by game. I found it to be pretty easy to buy the games. I found it to be straightforward to get onto the stream. I found the coverage to be good. I found it quite refreshing not to suffer from severe anger issues throughout the commentary of games. I'm not a massive fan of the full sort of in-house stuff all the time, but I think in terms of in Scotland and perhaps elsewhere as well, I think we've done okay in terms of the actually getting the games sort of broadcast to fans through our own in-house media for these home games this season.
I didn't have any problems at all. In fact, I would go as far as to say I thought the Rangers TV was actually really very good until the other night when they made the change. And I'm sure there are good business reasons or contractual reasons for them making the change, but they made the kind of change to the website and everybody had to kind of re-register and things. And that following game, I had a lot of problems. And that's the first time this season I've had problems. My dad, he didn't get to see any of the game. And again, my dad's not the most technologically minded, but he knows how to open the internet and he knew how to buy the thing. And he didn't get to see any of that game. He had some problems yesterday, but saw most of it. But he still had some problems yesterday. I saw the majority of the game yesterday. A wee moment where it went down on me for 20 seconds. And then it came back up. So the change I've not been gaga about. the start at the beginning, I thought Rangers TV was excellent. You know, the guests, the quality of guests they had. You had Walter Smith, you had people like Graham Souness. You know, I thought it was excellent. I think Emma Dodds is good. I quite like Emma Dodds. I wasn't overly familiar with her beforehand, but I thought she's been quite good. I like Neil McCann, and he now seems to be more or less permanent there. So they're quite good. The commentator, it's a difficult one because I don't like to criticise the guy because, you know, he's got his own style. And you know, he doesn't hide the fact that he is a supporter and he's doing it. So, you know, let's be honest, he's doing what we do. So it's very difficult for me to criticise him as I sit here pontificating on YouTube with absolutely no license to do it. But you know, the chap they got in earlier in the season is a better commentator, and it was a more professional commentary. But for whatever reason, I suspect that chap now has other games to commentate on, because I don't think the English football had started at that point. So I think overall it's been really good. Yeah, I mean, the question you asked me, I think overall it's been really good. I know some of our Gersnet colleagues haven't had the best of, but Colin lives in Falkirk, and I'm not sure they have proper internet there yet. I think he's trying to watch that in 2G or something on his Nokia. It may just be that's the issue. I think that's why remember they used to get a lot of UFOs and things spotted in Falkirk, and curiously that stopped since they all walk about with high definition recording equipment on them now. They don't see them anymore. Yeah. But it may be connected to that. Other than that, I think Rangers TV's been pretty good.
Yeah, Ross, it's been a sort of second place, you know, to actually being at the game, but just hopefully in the coming months and maybe by at least some point next season we'll get fans back in the stadium, and that'll be welcome. Very much so. Very welcome. It's, you know, I think it should never be forgotten how much of a tragedy it is that we can't be there and watch. You know, winning the league in this. I'm assuming that we're going to win it, if not in the next 4 weeks, then in the next 6 or something. But winning the league in this way at this much of a canter and with this much hilarity around it, you know, every week without fail, Shane Duffy puts a smile on my face. So these wee little side stories. All of winning the league in this manner, regardless of the season, regardless of 55, regardless of Operation Stop the 10, it would be magnificent and historic. So the fact that we can't be there to see it, I don't want to ever forget how sad that is. But you know, I think the most important thing is that we are going to win the league after a very, very difficult 10 years. It's really sad that we can't be there. I was looking, you know, thinking today about season ticket renewals, all the sort of literature around that will come out soon, all the advertising, and they'll have a catchy new slogan and a hashtag that we'll all get excited about, and we'll all of us will renew our season tickets. Not you, David. Didn't know you didn't have one. Not sure how you're the host, but yeah, we will. We'll all renew. We'll all still be there, and we'll all spend £500 on it. And it's a shame. But like I say, I like Rangers TV. I like Tom Miller. I think he's done a wonderful job throughout the, you know, because it's not just these last couple of seasons. He's been there for years and years and commented on hundreds of games, and he's incredibly knowledgeable about Scottish football. I met Tom Miller once after a game. It must have been last season, when it was the game that we got 4 penalties in one game, and I think it was against Ross County. And the media went mad, and it was terrible. And I met Tom Miller after the game, and we were talking about how, you know, surely there's never been a game in which there were 4 penalties before. And he just goes, well, no, in this game in 1987, this happened, and so got the 3rd penalty. And the knowledge in that guy's brain was just incredible. I think he's an asset to the club. And I get it, his delivery is certainly different to Clive Tilsley, who is a consummate professional commentator. I think Emma Dodds is top class and is a grade A sports presenter. I think any time that she's been away, I can't remember, I don't mean to be disrespectful, but I can't remember the woman's name that stood in for her. I think she was great as well. I'm not the biggest fan of Alec Gray's voice. Every time Alec Gray's commentating, he always says there's a wee ball around the face, so watch out for that. But that happens every game without fail. Neil McCann's great. Some of the we're getting less regular guests like Graham Souness and Walter Smith. That was wonderful that day. But as a very long-winded way of saying,
crap that we've not been there, but Rangers have done well to keep us all involved in it anyway.
Sorry, just very quickly. I liked the subtle introduction of an official VPN partner to things yesterday. Oh, okay. Yeah. Now we all know what we're watching next season as well.
Yeah, exactly. That's good business for Rangers TV. I'm surprised they didn't advertise it by saying, next time you want a 120-minute holiday to Thailand, consider NordVPN.
I must admit, I was sitting with a smug smile on my face thinking that the punchline was going to be about Colin again there, Ross, and you turned it round and it was me running a season ticket. So that was good. Anyway. So did I just carry on as host, or does someone come on and take over season ticket holder?
That's up to Frankie at the end of the show.
Yes, so we shall go on. We've touched on one of these guys, but I feel like every week when I host, which obviously this would be my last week, but I feel like we single a lot of players out. But these two guys have certainly came into the thinking this week, given they're both out of contract in the summer. That's Stephen Davis and Alan McGregor, two guys who are in their late 30s and still, leading the way in a title charge. John, first of all, I mean, how vital is it and how important is it that we try, or Stephen Gerrard tries to get these guys signed up for another year?
I would be amazed if a conversation hasn't taken place. That would really surprise me. But let's try and take the emotion out of it for a moment. I think Alan McGregor would sign up again. McGregor's, Edinburgh, but he's a local guy. He isn't going to. I suspect that he would be happy to sign up again, and certainly on his form this season, you would think the club would be keen to sign him up. And I imagine that there's a conversation taking place. At his age, he might say, well, I'd want a 2-year contract, or, I want more security. There may be a bit of haggling going on around that. The club would need to take a view on that. But I would be very surprised if the conversation hasn't taken place. Stephen Davis is slightly different. I could be wrong, but I think Davis's family are still down in England. I could be wrong in that, and if I am wrong, I apologise. But I remember reading recently that I think Davis's family are still down in England. That may be a factor in his thinking. That, I suppose under normal circumstances, he would have been able to see them. He's a senior professional. I suspect Gerrard would have been fairly open to him being able to travel down and see his family and maybe spend a couple of days down there, under the knowledge that he would look after himself and he probably doesn't need to be managed in the same way as maybe some of the younger players. He won't have been able to do that. That must be difficult. If that is the case, that must be difficult. I think we do need to remember sometimes these guys are humans. And if we are looking at a continuation of the restrictions that we're currently living under, if that, and none of us know, we could be out of this by April, we could be still in this in September, we don't know. That might come into his thinking. But again, I would be amazed if we haven't had the conversation with Steve Davis. Under normal circumstances, I would be surprised if Stephen Davis doesn't fancy another season, particularly if there was the lure of Champions League football. I don't think he's going to move to another club that could offer him Champions League football at this stage of his career. But he might fancy a season or two in America or China, maybe one last payday. I don't know. I don't know his thinking. That Davis is a Rangers supporter. This is his second time at the club. He's a fantastic professional. He's a joy to watch. He makes football look so easy. It's not vital we sign them up next campaign. Both of them can be replaced, but it will be hard to replace them with people who bring everything that they bring to the team.
Ross, in terms of, McGregor's a difficult one because I don't think anyone's surprised with the impact that he's having this season because he's been so impressive since he came back. But Davis, when Davis came back in the initial 6 months, he didn't play badly, but he certainly didn't make a massive impact on the team, I wouldn't have said. Last season came back into it a bit more, a couple of important goals in Europe. But this season he's been incredible, and you can see that the team doesn't quite tick without him in it. Have you been surprised by the impact that he's had this season, at the age of 36?
Honestly, yeah, I really have. I was like you, I was a little bit underwhelmed, let's say, when he first came back from Southampton, because I didn't think he was doing very well. And he didn't remind me of the player that we lost, however many years ago. And I get that obviously what with age, the body works differently, and he might have had to adapt his role, but I wasn't hugely impressed, as you say, the first couple of months when he came back. But I'm incredibly impressed with the control and the guile and the poise that he has, and the calmness that he brings to the pitch. And I think you could see that particularly last week against Hamilton. Obviously, I think we all could see that the game changed when Steve Davis and Ryan Jack were brought on. I think he's just class. I thought he was phenomenal yesterday, but man of the match by far for me. You get a lot of people saying, give him a pay as you play type deal. I don't know if that exists in professional football. I mean, a lot of people talk about it, but I don't know if that exists. I don't know. I don't get the sense that he would want to go to China, for example, or the Middle East. I don't know. Young family, seems like a kind of, I don't know, a settled family guy, and I don't know if he would disrupt that and move that far. But he's got every option to go for one last payday if he wants to. But I've been hugely impressed, and I think probably about 2 months ago on this show, I suggested that I wouldn't give him another deal. And actually, since then, he's kicked on, in my opinion. And we've had some performances since the turn of the year where we haven't been as dominant as we were in the first half of the year. Steve Davis is the exception to that, in my mind. He's been, kicked on a level above again. And I think he's integral to what we are now.
Yeah, John, those two are certainly going to be in the hunt for Player of the Year gongs at the end of the season. Gongs is a stupid word that only gets used in newspapers. I don't know why I've actually just said that. But others James Tavernier was said in the first half of the season that he would be a shoo-in, but I would disagree with that now. I think there's been a bit of a drop-off in his performances, but Conor Goldson certainly would be in with the show. I think he's been outstanding. Another would potentially be Glenn Kamara, or anyone else that may have tickled your fancy. But who do you think will be, or do you think they will all be front runners?
Yeah, I think they'll all be front runners. In terms of Rangers Player of the Year, in terms of Scotland's Player of the Year, I agree. For me, James Tavernier was a shoe-in a month ago. His form has dipped in that he's no longer scoring 3 goals every match from right back, but he's still not conceding any. He's still playing a defence that's not conceding any goals. He's still captaining a team that is unbeaten, and he still is contributing. I mean, he put some nice crosses in. The fact nothing came of them was not his. Was his doing. Neither him nor Barisic are marauding quite the way they were in the first half of the season. But I think that tactically, teams have stopped them. I think it was Ross that said earlier that it's been reported just now. People are saying, other sides have figured out how to play against Rangers. And I think what they mean by that is they've maybe stopped us from being as fluent as we were, but we're still able to win. So I think we'll still see something from James. I think there's still a fair chance that Tav will get Player of the Year. But Davis has had a magnificent season. McGregor has had, every time McGregor's been asked to do something, he has done it. He's had a magnificent season as well. And any of those three at this moment in time, I think if Jack hadn't had his injury, I think Jack would be a contender as well. And I think if he can stay fit and stay in the form that we saw certainly on Saturday, I suspect that he could be in there. And Kamara, something of an enigma at times. There are games where he's quiet, you don't think he's doing much, and then the next game he looks like he could walk into any team in the world. And we've also got a couple of European games coming up, at least 2 more European games coming up. Kamara has always looked magnificent, and I think that's his stage. I think he really enjoys that stage. So I couldn't pick one just now. I really couldn't. But in the end, there's only one gong that matters this season. Yes. They can give it to James Forrest for all I care. As long as we win the league, I couldn't care less who gets Player of the Year.
Well, speaking of successful I don't know what my segue was there, but basically, I will mention our partners, Football Prizes, who again are coming up with some fantastic Rangers-related prizes. At the moment on their website, they have a Ryan Kemp boot and an Andy Gorham glove, so something for all the generations. But Football Prizes, excellent things on offer there. And all of the details are on Frankie's social media. So if you're interested in the Football Prizes and how to get your hands on them, then visit Frankie's social media to get all the details. We're going to move on now to something that was mentioned, I think, on Friday's show briefly, but we're going to have a quick chat about this. But last week, obviously, the SFA published a report into child abuse in Scottish football. Rangers were mentioned in that report, and the SFA had urged clubs to apologise and to the victims. The club is yet to comment on this. Other clubs have so far, but Rangers have yet to publicly comment on the report in itself. John, I'll come to you on this. What are your thoughts, first of all, on the report itself, and then secondly, the club's lack of comment so far?
The report, I haven't read every page of the report. I've read some of it. It's 130 odd pages. It's a big report. It's not good reading. I'm, as is mentioned in most things, most times I'm older than you guys, and most of this deals with activities that took place in the 70s and 80s. Some of it goes into the 90s. Most of it is in the 70s and 80s. There is some allegations from the early 2000s, which surround females. But the majority of the allegations concern young men, boys. There's a number of clubs mentioned in it, and they're fairly well known. Partick Thistle, Motherwell, Hibs, Celtic. But really the only one that concerns us, the three of us, is Rangers. And Rangers are mentioned in it. The allegation is around a gentleman called Gordon Neely, who I believe has now passed away. The allegation is around him, and there are more than one allegation. There's two or three allegations. Neely had been at Hutchison Vale, quite a well-known boys' club in Edinburgh. From there, he went to Hibernian, and then from Hibernian, he came to Rangers. The report states that Neely was... the report states that he left Rangers. There is some ambiguity in the report, or the report basically saying there is some ambiguity over the circumstances of his departure. The report says they cannot corroborate what Rangers said about his departure. There's an article in the Rangers News, kind of wishing him all the best. Thanks for your time in the club, and all the best in your new career type thing. There's a couple of allegations made about the reaction of other coaches at the club when he left, which do not paint the club in a good light. It has to be said. So it's not easy reading. It's not a great thing as a Rangers supporter. It's not something that you're going to take a great deal of comfort from. As I said, I'm not going to talk about other clubs. Some of what's happened to other clubs is very well known, and it's not for us as Rangers supporters to talk about it. I really can only concern myself with what's happened at Rangers, what's been reported as what's happened at Rangers. So that's the kind of thrust of what is being said about Rangers. It does go into more detail. There's more detail about the actual offences, and there's more detail about what Rangers have reported to the panel that put this together. I think we have to take it seriously. I don't think we can dismiss this as some daft thing from the SFA. I do think we need to take it seriously. I suspect the club are taking it seriously. I suspect the club are taking every aspect of this. They certainly seem to have cooperated with it. So from that perspective, you have to assume that things are going on in the background. The lack of comment from the club, on one hand, it looks strange. On one hand, we would maybe look at that and think, okay, well, why have we not even said, we've seen the report, we're reading it, we'll make a comment in time. The lack of any comment is a little surprising, a little strange. I'm assuming the club's got sight of it beforehand. I don't know if that for a fact, but normally is what would happen. The clubs would get sight of it beforehand and get a chance to form an opinion and know they were going to be asked. So I suppose the fact that we haven't said anything is a little unusual. On the other hand, this is a very serious topic. It's more serious than us three sitting talking. It's only right that we at least address it in some way. It's a very serious topic. I expect there are lawyers involved in this. I expect there are various things going on, and it may be that for reasons that we don't know and shouldn't know, or none of our business, that the club feel they can't talk about it just now. And again, I guess we just have to kind of wait and see what the club choose to do. I'd say it's a couple of other things on this. Ross mentioned this the other night. There's an article on Gersnet just now written by Frankie. And it's not, Frankie doesn't hide it. Frankie was a very good footballer at one time. He was on the books of Dundee United, and he has an insight into what that life was like. He understands what it was like to be a young, an up-and-coming young footballer, and the pressures that come with that, and the characters that you are exposed to. And he wrote, it really is. It's. I'm not just saying that because it's Frankie. It's worth reading. It's on the Gersnet website. And interestingly, if you look at it on the forum, there's a follow-up piece written by one of the regular posters there who talks about his time at Fir Park Boys Club. Fir Park Boys Club at that time were a feeder club from Motherwell, and they were the unofficial Motherwell Boys Club, and they were a very good team. And he makes some very interesting observations about the Celtic Boys Club at the time. And the interesting observation he makes is that Celtic probably had the best boys club in Scotland at the time. They probably had the most successful youth system. And when he played against them, their first choice 11 would be there. But he makes the point, there's probably another 30 boys standing at the side who didn't make that first team. All with the blazers on, all with the flannels, all desperate to play. And it's an interesting observation about the pressure that was on young boys at that time. Now, I was around in the 70s and the 80s, and it was a very different time to what it is now. It simply was. My wife's involved in the local EB, and the rules and regulations now about who I can't just go down there and offer to give a couple of the boys a run home if it's raining. Can't do that. That's not allowed. Everybody has to go through full disclosure. Mums and dads can't just help out in the way they could when I was 12. It's very, very different to what it was then. It's different for a reason, and I guess that's these are good reasons. But we are dealing with something from the past, dealing from something 20, 30 years ago. It's difficult to judge behaviour then to today's mores. I think you do need to always bear that in mind. But either way, it does read like there is something that needed to be addressed at the time, and was addressed, but was it addressed as fully as it could have been, and perhaps as it should have been? I don't know. That aspect of the report is a little worrying. But as I said, I would be surprised and I'd be very disappointed if the club aren't doing something about it. But I would urge everybody read Frankie's article. It's worth 10 minutes of your time, and as I said, the kind of follow-up piece that one of the other contributors made, and I think it gives a good insight into just what it was like at that time. It can be quite difficult, I think, to perhaps see back there.
I think the important thing to add just finally on that is anyone that was victim of that, any club in that period of time, as you've said, 70s, 80s, or in more recent years, I think it's just important that this report delivers some form of justice to them, and whatever that may be to them. And I hope that is the case, and that is what comes of it, in whichever form. But I think justice for those who were victim to this is paramount for any report. Just finally, before we finish for the night, Ross, back in Europe on Thursday, there'll be a more comprehensive Euro preview, I would have thought, through the week. I think Alec Anderson is chomping at the bit to have his say on Royal Antwerp, because I've heard the story before, but I'm sure he'll tell you all about it on Wednesday. But it's good to be back in Europe. And just a quick point before we finish up, I do wonder if being back in Europe will serve as a help in getting the sort of form we were showing, in 2020 certainly back, because it seemed to be the run of games and how consistently the games were coming along played a part in the good play and the good performances.
Yeah, I think there's something in that. I think it's a different type of challenge, a change of scenery. I think it'll be quite energizing for the players. It's glamorous as well, knockout stages of European competition with an incredibly good chance of progressing. I was actually just looking at odds and stats there. We've got a roughly 70 to 75% chance with most bookies of getting through this and getting to the last 16. So it's quite an exciting thing being this deep into a European competition. I mean, you go back 15 years, or even 20 years, it was never guaranteed that we would be here. So to be here now it's really exciting, and I don't want that to ever kind of rub off. So I actually think it'll be a really good, energizing, refreshing thing for us to get to go into Europe again. Different type of challenge. I don't imagine Antwerp are about to place 10, 11 men behind the ball and see how long it takes for us to break them down. And yeah, I think we say it quite a lot actually, that momentum in football is massive, and winning streaks and losing streaks. Celtic never had any momentum because of Bolingoli and then Dubai and all sorts. Whereas Rangers, the first half of the season, the momentum was incredible, and it was like a steam train just kept on going. And Europe played a big part in that, as you say. It was league at the weekend, Europe on a Thursday, and it worked. So I think it's important. I'm really, really looking forward to it. Again, Antwerp, it would be a wonderful place for the Rangers fans to go and visit. Would have been a cracking trip. Most important thing is that we go, we get a positive result, get an away goal. I'm fairly confident, actually. I think, I think we should be expecting to go and get a good result there. And I think we should, without being greedy, I think we should be expecting to progress from this tie. But I'm really looking forward to it, and I think it will serve to be a good thing in terms of the league campaign, because it's got a bit stale. The last few matches, I don't know when I was last properly inspired by Rangers in the league. It's got a little bit stale, so I think this will be a good thing.
And are we going to win the Europa League, do you think?
Well, so the odds for that I've just been checking are around about 35 to 40 to 1. So no, but maybe.
That's the same odds as me ever returning to host this show. Anyway, yes.
Antwerp aren't in great form. They lost. They withdrew today and lost their game before.
They're not in good form, and allegedly have a lot of injuries biting around now as well. So, look, you can make an argument that we're also not in great form. Our last 4 games, we've scored 1 goal in each of them.
I'll take 1-0 on Thursday.
Absolutely take 1-0 on Thursday. But no, they're not in great form. I think we have to count ourselves as maybe not favourites for the this match, but favourites for the tie, absolutely. And I'm just looking forward to it. I think for me, it's just incredibly exciting to be this, to get through the group stages of European competition. It's huge. It's huge. I love it.
Yeah. But to be fair, if Hamilton and Killie have figured out how to play against us, then
that's it. We haven't got.
We should be scared.
I'm really scared.
Antwerp will be a decent team. I mean, I think when we played Liège earlier in this season, that was there were two closer games than perhaps the scorelines suggested. I thought it was actually nip and tuck in the first leg. We're sitting at 1-0, and when the boy, if you remember, the weather was terrible, and the guy missed an absolute sitter just before Roof scored his 50-yarder. And that game could have been won each, and I don't know if we could have complained too much. I think we got the rub of the green that night. So this will be a decent team, and I'm really looking forward to it. I have to say, I agree. The thought of European football again, and at this time of year, that will never get boring. That's just great.
Yeah, well, I better wrap it up because we've blabbed on a wee bit over time. But no, it's been an enjoyable night. As always, if you enjoy what we're doing here, then please subscribe or give us a like on social media. Previous episodes, tonight's show, are all available to listen to on the usual platforms from Monday, Spotify, iTunes, Stitcher, Castbox, etc., wherever you get your podcasts. Ross will return next Sunday to host with Colin and Alec, so tune in then. And thanks to both my guests, John and Ross, tonight. And until next time, good night.